What's going on, everybody? Welcome to this week's LUMIX Live. Excuse me. So we've got a kind of way more question-heavy stream for everybody today. I figured now that we're kind of in the holiday season after Thanksgiving, all that kind of fun stuff, and with the G9 Mark II shipping and a lot of people getting their hands on with it, now would be a great time for just an open AMA session with us here. I've got a couple of questions and things that have been posted on various different platforms here on LUMIX Live in the comments, over on DP Review on the forums, over on the Facebook groups, things like that. So we wanted to take this particular time and try to address as many of them as we can and offer time for those of you that have questions that maybe you haven't seen asked anywhere to actually ask them here and get some answers. I have my G9 Mark II hooked up so we can go through menus, we can talk about some of the various different, places where you can find things in the cameras. I also have my S5 Mark II. I have an S5 Mark II X here. I even have my GH6 ready to go. So pretty much have all the major new cameras here to try to walk through and be able to hook up and show you all some different stuff about it. So if you are new to these streams, these are weekly broadcasts that we do where you get to talk directly to the brand, not having to go through third-party information, not having to listen about other people's opinions or thoughts or interpretations of maybe what we're doing with the cameras. So you can ask those questions here, and if I have an answer for them, I will gladly give it to you. And yeah, we'll be able to kind of go through it. Before I go too far into that, I want to remind a lot of people about LUMIX Pro services here in the United States. We have Red and Platinum available. Red is free if you've just recently purchased a camera. Make sure to go get yourself registered for LUMIX Pro services Red. You can either follow the QR code on the screen, go to the link down in the description, or type in the link that you see on the screen there. This is where you're going to get your 3-year extended manufacturer warranty on top of the 1 year that you have out of the box. If you like to have higher levels of service and protection, you can always take a look at Platinum level. That is our paid level service. That will get you all the same options that you have with Red, but on top of it, you'll get 2-day repairs with next day shipping both ways. You get 20% off out of warranty repairs, so drop, break a lens, camera, things like that. You get a little bit of a discount towards that repair. You also get access to the membership hotline if you prefer to speak to someone instead of going through chat or things like that. Happy to work with any of the Platinum members on that side. And then you also get annual sensor cleanings, lens calibrations, firmware updates, all that kind of fun stuff in that higher level. We still do give the welcome gift. I think I did see a post over on the DP Review forums showing what the current package is with it. So you get a really cool Peak Design strap designed with the LUMIX Pro Service logos and all that stuff on it. And it is open to Micro Four Thirds and full frame cameras here in the United States. So yeah, everyone, if you got a camera, go take a look at the site. Get yourself registered for it if you haven't already. So let's take a look at some of the questions that have come in. First question that came in here live on chat was from Ian. Says, will there be a future update for the S5 II so that it will get bird eye AF? At this point, I don't have any information on future firmware updates for S5 Mark II or Mark II X. Those of you that know, the G9 Mark II does get animal eye detection, car detection, and motorcycle detection. These are all new advancements with our PDAF system. Whether or not those are going to be coming to the S5 Mark II, it's too early for me to be able to tell. But as soon as we do get any kind of information like that, obviously we're going to let you know. We're going to talk about it. So, PhotoCap says, will there come a power zoom for full frame? Power zooms, I think, are definitely interesting lenses. Very useful in a lot of various different areas of photography and primarily in videography. At this point, I do not have any information on power zooms for our full frame system, for the L-mount system. But the more y'all ask for stuff like that, the higher the likelihood is that we can try to get stuff like that done. So yeah, if you just keep letting us know that you want them, it's easier for people like Matt and I to feed that information up into our product planning and engineering teams and stuff like that. But as of right now, Nothing that I'm aware of. Let's see here. Richard's here. Hey, how's it going, Richard? Anson's here. Awesome. Lots of people joining from all over the globe. Black and white profile for GH6 is done for the G9 Mark II. Same hardware, so no issue. ... It's kind of the same with like the autofocus detection updates for S5 Mark II, Mark II-X. A lot of times things like that, it may sound easy to implement. It's not always the case. G9 Mark II versus GH6 are not using the same hardware. I want to make that incredibly clear. It is not the same sensor, and it is not the same processor. You can look at pixel densities and things and say, oh, well, they're the same, but that's only one little piece. Pixel density, yes, is the same between the two, and maybe base architecture is roughly the same between the two, but G9 Mark II is using an entirely different sensor than what the GH6 used. So, not that I think that would be a reason why we couldn't do stuff like profile changes over, but remember, color profiles have to be based on the sensor that you're using because sensor characteristics are different. That's why Vlog changes are changed over the time between various different sensor generations. But that's something I know I've asked for it. I know a lot of you have asked for it. As we get information, obviously we'll let you all know. Forgotten says, why can't the S5 IIX shoot open gate while in ProRes? This is actually another really good question. Honestly, I don't know why we can't shoot open gate in ProRes. It's something that I know Matt Fraser and I have been presenting into our engineering team and to our product planning teams. That there is definitely a big, support of wanting ProRes with the open gate option there. So comments like yours asking where it is what helps us get that into the team to show that this isn't necessarily something that maybe just Matt and I want, but something that y'all are asking for. So I wish I had a better answer for you, but yeah. Let's see here. I asked you, but you misunderstood the question. I'm using the app in iPhone for sending photos from the S1, S5, S5 II, and some of the pics don't appear properly or transferred for some. If you could clarify what the question is, because I'm not 100% understanding, I think, what your question is about that. I use the LUMIX sync app for all the cameras, both on iOS and on Android, on the newest versions of iOS and Android, on relatively new phones. And I'm not seeing any problems with the transfer of the photos. So if you can give me a little bit of help as far as what exactly the problem is you're running into, I can try to address it today during the stream. Leg says, ton of us have been experiencing micro jitters with the LUMIX 35-100 f2.8. Sending a lens in for repair doesn't help. Any insight on this by chance? Which 35-100 f2.8? If it's the Generation 1, there's been a lot of hardware changes as you go to Generation 2 and then now into the Leica series. So I guess I would need to understand which lens you've got that you're seeing some issues with. Let's see here. Steven says, some conflicting opinions. What is the best way to prepare for sensor cleaning? Power off or power on and IS off disabled? I have a G9 and G9 Mark II. So if you are going to try to do sensor cleaning by yourself, I have to preface this very clearly that you are doing so at your own risk. If you happen to damage or you cause any kind of problems on the sensor, if you're doing wet cleaning, stuff like that, you're releasing us from responsibility of damage caused. If you send it in for service, it's done in a lab, in a clean room, that kind of thing. If you're going to be doing this yourself, like pretty much all cameras, turn them off. You don't want these things running while you're trying to, touch or do anything to the sensors. I do sensor cleanings on my own, but I also have a lot of background working in retail and in support and some rental houses before I got into this world, so I'm fairly confident for myself to do it. But again, that part, knowing that I'm doing it at my own risk, if I wreck my camera, if I scratch the glass, if I fry a circuit because I use too much liquid or the cleaning solution, stuff like that, it's on me to repair and replace. I can't get mad at the company because of something I did to the system. But yeah, Just always power the camera off if you're ever going to do stuff like that. Same principle with, like, if you're going to remove media, memory cards, things like that. You should be powering the camera off before that, and waiting for all the lights and all that kind of stuff to turn off. That's kind of what it's good practice that we've gotten out of over the last couple of years. Actually, more than a couple of years. People have always been doing it, so. Pete says, motorcycle detection. I wonder who was responsible for that addition. I like to think I had something to do with it, definitely. But we have a lot of incredibly talented engineers, and especially on the AF side, that have a lot of really cool stuff they want to do and detect. And a lot of times it just takes a new system changeover and new capabilities found with hardware to bring some of these things into the real world. Jake says, will Mark 1 full-frame cameras still get updates? Kind of depends. We have a pretty good track record, I would think, and I think it's fair to say we have a good track record of keeping modern cameras up to date. So, yeah. As far as updates, if they're hardware updates, as far as, like, new models, even if I knew something, I wouldn't be able to tell you. As far as firmware updates go, if there's a need for something to be updated, we've typically been pretty good at doing that. But you may not see major updates to older cameras. Like, I know a lot of people want to see for autofocus updates, like what you see in the G9 Mark II and the Mark IIX, and for the S5s, S5 II series, but those are not going to come back to the original S cameras. Let's see here. Is there a lens roadmap for the S series? Technically, yes, there is. I can see if I can find it. We do have lens roadmaps posted on our global page. Let me see if I can find it quickly. Because it is on our global page up here. Yeah, here it is. Let's well, it'll help if I actually stayed on the page that I wanted to show y'all. Let's do this. Lens roadmap. So, let's see here. And let's change to this one. Yeah, here we go. So for the question about lens roadmaps, we have lens roadmaps, or a lens roadmap up for the S series, so the L mount setup. So from us, there's a couple ways to interpret what we have up on this page. So we have the lens lineup. This is typically what is available, what has been made, ready to buy, ready to purchase, things like that. And then we have, and actually this page does need to be updated. Then you have the lens roadmap as you go further down. You'll see that we have a macro planned, we have a wide to tele zoom planned. There were a couple other updates, but yeah, as I'm just looking at this site, it hasn't been updated. But yeah, you would be able to find information like that here. So, let's see here. I'm still looking for an explanation of the focus stacking option. It is totally confusing, and I'm getting very inconsistent results. So, Michael, depending on the camera that you're looking at, G9 Mark II, and actually basically all the cameras that have removed 4K, 6K photo, which also by extension means the post-focus function is no longer there, those cameras do not have in-camera stacking for like macro photography. They have other things that they do, like high-resolution shot or live view composite, that are, you could consider them kind of stacking, but they're not in the traditional sense that most people are saying that they want stacking. If you go to a camera like the original G9, that has post-focus functionality. And post-focus functionality is going to basically take a video file, rack focus from near to far, far to near, however you want it set up, and that is going to be recording focus points with it as it goes through the frame that you can then later in the camera go in and say, I want you to photo merge these, and it will compress them down into a single JPEG image output. It was an okay solution for some stacking. I don't want to make it sound like it was the perfect thing in the world. However, doing focus stacking with things like Helicon and stuff like that was always going to produce a better result. One of the nice benefits of doing it in that 4K, 6K photo function was that you could take that MP4, put it into a program like Helicon, and it would split out the images, and then use them for the stack, and you'd get infinitely better results. Modern cameras, all the PDAF cameras, they have focus bracketing, where you can tell the camera to capture multiple frames. Those frames are individual frames that you then take off the camera, put into the computer, and do your stacking. So it's pretty just straightforward like that. So hopefully that kind of helps clear some stuff up, Michael. Let's see here. FC, what happened to the pause button for video recording? Old VHS tape camcorders had a pause button back in the day. That's a good question. Modern cameras, I think, yeah, I don't know of anyone that has a pause recording in mirrorless cameras. I think in some higher end camcorders and broadcast type cameras you have them. Yeah. It says, yeah, LUMIX Sync app sending photos to camera roll is not perfect. Some of the pics that transferred looks like damaged files, lines, or really bad color cast. Only 1 or 2 pics. I can tell you 100% that is not anything that I have run into. And this is actually, you're the first person that I've seen having an issue like that. First thing I would look into as far as troubleshooting for something like that is if the wireless transfer of that image to your mobile device is showing like a damaged file or cast problems, things like that, try to transfer that same image to your phone from a different method. So if you have like one of the little USB readers or card readers, like the dongle life kind of thing, if you have one of those, try sending the file into your phone that way. See if there's a problem there. Try to isolate down, is it the file itself? Is it the Wi-Fi transfer? Is it the phone? But yeah, I can tell you, testing on both my 13 Pro Max and on my Fold 5 with all the iOS, with the LUMIX Sync app, I've never had that problem with the files for RAW or JPEG. So yeah, wish I could help you better on that one. Let's see here. Justin says, are there any plans to add color grain effect from the L.Classic Neo picture profile to other color profiles, as well as custom white balance locked to a custom photo style? I don't know if there are plans for it. We've definitely asked about getting the luminance or the grain and the color grain effect added to other profiles. I just don't know how high on a priority list that is for development. Everything always has to be kind of balanced out, right? How important is this as an update versus how important is this other piece for an update? A lot of that kind of stuff has to get, kind of put into a list of priority. The more people want to see certain things, the higher up on that priority it goes, if it's got relevancy and is even possible with some stuff. So as far as color grain goes, I would love to see that. And custom white balance locked to a custom photo style, you can do that kind of if you go on the newer cameras. In fact, actually, I think I can show this to everybody. So if you go into your camera and you go to photo style settings, go to my photo style settings, you do add effect, you can change, you can add white balance and sensitivity to the options here. So when I go in to actually create one of my photo styles, so say I want to do photo style 9, you set the base profile that you want to work with. So say I want to work with L.Classic Neo. So we'll go to L.Classic Neo. I can come down here. This is where like I can add grain effect and I can add the color grain effect. That's what the previous question was. But I can also come down here and I can change white balance to my custom white balance sets, and that will lock it to that color profile. So the default profiles, like standard, vivid, things like that, you don't have that option here. You have to go to the My Photo Style to add that, if that's something you wanted to do. So hopefully that helps with that answer. The HDMI external monitor image lag issue will be attended in the near future. HDMI latency on the cameras, it is what it is with the way the cameras are. If you want to reduce latency over HDMI with the current batch of camera, or with the current series of cameras, you can disable the audio over HDMI, and you'll see that you get a little bit faster. But yeah, that's kind of how that is. Hey, Sean, could you please explain what is considered internal recording and external recording in the context of SSD, or potentially some other context as well? This is a great question. So, where is it? Here we go. All right, so internal recording, at least the way we kind of describe it, right? Most camera companies are probably going to be on the same page with this. Internal recording for a device in the cameras would be referencing not necessarily the media that you're using. It is where the processing is happening for that image. So internal recording would identify that the camera is processing and saving direct to a storage device. That storage device on our cameras, at least on the newer ones, like G9 Mark II, GH6, or S5 IIX, can consist of either the onboard card readers, which would be SD for G9 Mark II and S5 IIX, or CF Express and SD, which would be GH6. You can then also throw in things like this Pro Blade handle using an external SSD. Because this is not actually recording anything, this is just a storage device, is going to be considered internal recording. That, again, it goes back to that point that the camera is the one that's actually creating the file. That is why we can do things like ProRes to an SSD, we can do all-I, long GOP, photos, any video format, you name it, we can put it there. When it comes to things like raw video recording is an external recording functionality. All the camera is doing is sending raw data out over the HDMI. That is then plugged into either the Blackmagic Video Assist or the plethora of Atomos devices now that are taking that raw data and then creating the ProRes RAW or Blackmagic RAW footage out of it. Those are external recording functions on it, and that is external storage of that device, because at that point, your camera is acting... Think of your camera in RAW over HDMI as literally just like a brain that's taking the information and sending it somewhere else to be processed. Or actually more like your eyes, the recorder would be like the brain at that point, where it's taking the data in and then creating that file. So yes, SSDs are considered internal recording. External recording would be HDMI data out over HDMI. And if you're not doing RAW over HDMI, then it's kind of a mixed thing, right? You can record internally, and then HDMI the signal out, and HDMIing the signal out because you're just sending a video signal out that's already processed. Then it's an external recorder can be doing it, but that means that it's not exclusive to what the camera's doing. So hopefully that kind of helps, gives you a little bit of clarity and, you know, kind of direct answer from us on that part. Let's see here. Is it possible to record scratch audio through the internal mic while also recording via the 3.5 jack on the S5 II? I think so. I have to double check. I have not done a lot of audio experimentation, and that's like the one thing I don't have on my desk is my microphones. If you give me a little bit, I can try to check on that for us. Yeah. So, let's see here. Where'd that question go? Nolan, got my G9 Mark II. Excited. The AF in video changes a lot once I hit ISO 1600. Performance at all lenses is great up to 1250. But after that, lots of hunting. Is it switching to contrast AF? After 1600, no, it shouldn't be. Typically, what I think some people see is when you go really high ISO, typically hand in hand, you're also shooting in lower light scenarios. Ultra low light scenarios is where PDAF is usually not as good as contrast. I know that that's probably going to flame some people. But no, it's not switching over at 1600. As far as everything I have, it's not switching over. Let's see here. Where do you go? Live. Can 60p 420 be updated to 422 via firmware for the cameras like the GH5 Mark II? Probably not. When it comes to codec and bitrate and resolution and chroma subsampling, stuff like that, usually you won't see much of a change when it comes to a lot of that stuff, especially in a GH line camera. Usually they are pushed as basically as hard as they can go, with as high as they can go given the hardware constraints. 422 versus 420, let's be honest here. 422 versus 420, unless you are an ultra high-end color grading studio or a colorist, you're probably never going to see the difference between the two in the real world. The shift there is going to be relatively minor. Relatively, I'm not speaking in definitives there, so please don't come at me on that particular point. But it also comes down to that 60p on a lot of our cameras, especially like anything that's 420 and it's in 10-bit. Those are HEVC compression. 422 10-bit HEVC is still not widely supported for decoding and working with on your computers. Yes, the Mac group of people with the M1s are going to come at me and say, well, but my M1 Mac can do it. That's great. It's still not the majority of computers that are out there and what the vast majority of people are using. Even the highest end spec things like, or consumer grade things from like NVIDIA and things like that, it's 420 10-bit in HEVC is what is hardware supported for decoding and encoding. So yeah, you have to kind of, you have to remember that just because we want certain things, you have to also think about what the real world implication is going to be. Is it going to cause more problems with people that then complain that they have it in this mode and they can't edit the files for anything on their computer? Their workflow is completely falling apart, that kind of thing. Eventually, I'm sure we'll get there as far as 422 goes in things like HEVC, but at that point, usually you're working on a high enough project that shooting in ProRes or shooting in RAW over HDMI would probably be maybe the better choice there. Especially with like compressions that you can get on Blackmagic RAW, stuff like that. So that's kind of where that world is right now. Let's see here. Why does none of the S-series cameras connect with a gimbal via Bluetooth? Even with a DJI device within the L mount, it is not possible. A lot of that just comes down to when that technology was released, how it interacts with the camera and the device, what the function of the Bluetooth controllers built into cameras are designed for from day one, and whether or not it is even technically possible to communicate the required protocols between each other. It's the same principle as to why Bluetooth headphone monitoring on cameras is probably not going to come anytime soon, because your latency is going to be ridiculous, and if people are already having problems with a few frames of latency on HDMI, imagine what's going to happen when you have noticeable latency over audio for monitoring. Same with recording for that. So yeah, it's about the entire experience. When things are ready, it's when you see things kind of deploy. We do push the bounds on a lot of things that we try to put into the cameras. However, we do it with a pretty strong level of responsibility there, that if we are going to try to deploy something, there has to be some degree of confidence that on the user side of it, it's going to be very or highly user problem free when it comes into it. So you have to think about the bounding of making sure that just because you can doesn't mean that it's really the right thing to do at the current time until it's actually properly ready. Let's see here. S52X, you can deactivate horizontal IBIS for panning shots. Why is this option not available for video shooting as well? Tried to film race cars with 70-200 f4 and the IBIS worked against it. O2F, I would double check what your stabilization settings were. In video, especially with the newer cameras like the 2X, the S5 II, and the G9 Mark II, You don't have to disable or change the stabilization for video. What commonly happens is either Boost IS is enabled or you have like EIS enabled, depending on the camera. Boost IS, designed for static shots. You should not be moving the camera with that mode. EIS can fight you depending on the movement that you're doing, especially if you're going to be doing panning. When it comes to the filming that I've done with motorcycles and things like that, if you just leave it in basic, turn EIS off, make sure Boost IS is turned off, should be perfectly fine for you with it. You shouldn't have anything that's overtly fighting you with the stabilization there, because it's designed to float like it should. Let's see here. Great lens roadmap. You'd love to see something similar to the 10 to 25 for full frame. That would be a 5 to 15 at that point. Like a fast 20 to 50 would also be useful. I can see that. Let's see here. I am going to answer this one, even though it's not in the with the LUMIX live tag, because I actually have examples that I want to show about this to address some things that I've seen popping up online there. It says, hi there, enjoying the show. Do you think the G9 Mark II coupled with the Leica 200mm f2.8 would be a good combination for sports? Cheers. Yes, absolutely. I believe that is a great lens for sports. Sports, wildlife, motorsports, you name it. It's a great focal length. You're at 400mm. You have f2.8 on the 4/3 system. You're going to get great separation of background from your subject. It's a Leica series lens, so you can shoot it wide open and it's going to perform incredibly well. It's fast focusing. It keeps up with the G9 Mark II. It's teleconverter compatible, so actually when you buy it, you get a 1.4 teleconverter with it in the box. Yeah, it's a fun lens. It's a great lens to work with. I actually, while I was out in Ojai for the LUMIX Collective event, I was with a bunch of the creators and we were photographing hummingbirds with G9 Mark II and the 200mm at wide open, and it's a freaking awesome lens. I love that lens. So yes, 100% great solution for it. I highly recommend it. If you can get your hands on one, go for it. Let's see here. FC, I love the pre-recorded video about real-time LUT where you shoot the footage outdoors with different color schemes. Will there be a camera setting on how you got those colors? Yeah, so there technically is. In the description of that video, the one that we did 2 weeks ago, if you look in the description, I referenced Ted Forbes, The Art of Photography. That video was using his LUT packs. Well, they're not LUT packs yet. They are the Lightroom presets that he used. I have versions of them that are LUTs for being able to just apply it right over the footage that I was working with to get those particular looks. So that kind of setup there, if you were, one thing that you could try to do is get that LUT pack, put it into Photoshop, follow the real-time LUT guidelines that I did on one of the videos, the other videos, it's linked in that video, videoception there, and then you can have Photoshop kick out a LUT that has that kind of effect applied to it, as well as anything else that you want to throw onto it, and then you can put it into your camera and run that just like anything else. That's how I did it for that kind of stuff. Let's see here. Neon had a question or a comment there. Where did that one go? I just saw that question there. Why is it not there anymore? Neon. Where did that go? We saw that one. Did LUMIX retain night mode on the G9 Mark II? Yes. Night mode and live view boost are still part of the G9 Mark II. Let's see here. LUMIX Live, G9 and the GH5 Mark II, hardware-wise, seem the same. Could theoretically the GH5 also do 80 megapixel high-res mode if a firmware allowed it? No, actually they can't. GH5 Mark II does not have the gyro sensors required, and the stabilizer is not the same precision stabilizer that's used in the G9 or G9 Mark II or the newer cameras. That's why GH5 Mark II doesn't have that mode. Let's see here. Field, very happy so far with the G9 Mark II, but I have some questions on the dynamic range function. Could you explain when it's using dynamic range boost? Looks like maybe not for long exposures, handheld high res versus regular high res mode. So this is one of the things I was expecting people were going to be asking about this, because I have seen the thread over on DP Review, and it's one of the reasons why I wanted to do an AMA this week instead of doing a general prepared topic like I've done in the past. I'm going to first lay this out clearly, that the commentary that you are seeing on any of the forums or on Facebook or anything about people trying to come up with a conclusion or that is telling you how the system works, if it is not coming from someone that works for Panasonic, it's a guess. They don't know. Some may be educated guesses, some may be just total fallacies of what they think. But the truth is, no one in those forums has any idea what we're doing with the sensor or how it works. So with that being prefaced, when we launched the camera, there were notes, some people have pointed it out, as to when the dynamic range boost system is running on the camera. It is an automatic system. It turns on and off depending on the combination of various different settings. If you're in video, it is active everything up to 60 frames per second. When you go 61 frames per second or faster, dynamic range boost is turned off. That is how the system works. When you're in photography, the notes that we've shown, and people have posted online before, are exact verbatim words. Dynamic range boost, when using SH, is not active. That does not universally state that electronic shutter does not use DR boost. Electronic shutter is using DR boost. It's the SH modes in particular. So got that out of the way. When it comes to shutter speed, this is something I am currently in the process of working with my team in Japan to get clarity on what that statement was, about how it relates to ISO and what shutter speeds it relates to. At this point, I don't have a clear enough answer to give you an answer here. But I am working with the teams, the engineering team, the marketing team, everybody, to actually be able to give you a clear, definitive answer on what's happening when it comes to shutter speeds. What I can tell you is, if you are taking a look at what you see online with the conversations about dynamic range and things like that, there are a few things that are being, I don't know if it's purposely overlooked as far as the conversation goes. Photo to Photons has posted the stuff on there, and that's kind of what sparked, I think, a lot of the conversations here with it. But Photo to Photons is measuring one thing. Others, as you can see on a lot of platforms, are showing you real-world examples. I have showed you real-world examples on LUMIX Live about how much better the shadow performance is in this camera, and dynamic range is not... The conversation doesn't encompass the entire thing. It's looking at a test chart. Test charts are great. I've said this on the forum before. Test charts are great. I'm not saying don't geek out on that stuff. I geek out on that information as well. However, people are getting way too obsessed with what a chart says a number should be versus what real world people are showing you as the real world use cases of these cameras. And this is true for everything. I'm not just saying it about ours. In the real world, the G9 Mark II is producing a much better image quality. Quality as a collective response. That would mean dynamic range, shadow color cast, noise in the shadows, highlight retention, all of it combined into one. As I've said, we have shown it, and I actually have to show you here. This is a horribly processed but really pushed up shadowed image from the GH6 using ISO 200, so it's base ISO, in the standard color profile. So you can see the adjustments that I've made. I've brought the white levels way up, I've brought the shadows all the way up, left black levels the way they are. If we come into the shadow here, you see what comes apart in the shadows when I've pushed it this hard. If I go to the G9 Mark II image, same exposure, same settings, The shutter speed is slightly different. It's 1/15th versus 1/20th. But you'll see here, same exact exposure changes here. Up half a stop in exposure value. How much cleaner the G9 Mark II image is. So while yes, you can look on a chart and say, hey, dynamic range, this number is what it should be. That is not accounting for what happens when you actually have to push these things in post. A lot of people are also pointing out online, well, hey, why would you ever do underexposed by 5 stops and pull up 5 stops back to 0? It's a fair argument. You shouldn't be shooting like that. However, where it comes into play is in shots like this. This is G9 Mark II, ISO 100, so this is the base ISO, f4 on the 200mm Leica, 2000th of a second. And I'm going to preface this also by saying I am not a wildlife birding photographer, but bear with me. This is what is fairly common for a lot of people. I want to make sure I keep the sky in proper exposure with detail, with information there. And because of that, the shadowed region of this hawk or whatever it is way in the shadows there. I have the ability to do crazy adjustments, like literally come in here, adjust this exposure, bring this image back, and pull all of that information out of the actual shadowed region of this camera. Now, if you go back and do this with earlier cameras, if you do this with some of the competing cameras in this category, this is going to be a noisy mess. It's going to have color cast. It's going to be not great. Ours is retaining a non-color casted image, and you see how hard I pushed this. Brought the whites up so that I can really boost this whole setup. I haven't even touched exposure, but I've brought the highlights back to keep the proper looking exposure to that image. This is what's important about how this system works. Dynamic range boost is what makes this possible. So, that's a little bit of the diatribe there on that. As far as with long exposures, handheld high-res versus high-res mode, that is part of the stuff that I'm asking for clarity and working with the team currently. As we speak right now, I am working with them so that I can get you a little bit more kind of information on how that stuff works. Yeah, so there you go, Fielding. And everybody else that was asking. I'm sure I'll see myself being quoted online somewhere about this. And yeah. Those are the breaks of the internet. Let's see here. Han says, is it possible to have the option to do live cropping on your raw photos? If you can clarify what you mean by live cropping on the raw photos, I would be happy to try to explain or see if we can do that. Yeah. Paul says, I just finished my first client project. It was over 10K with my S1H. Beast of a camera. Awesome. I love when I hear people actually getting out there making money with stuff. Yeah. Michael says, sorry, Sean, I meant focus bracketing. Shot with an S5 II and G9 II. I don't understand the settings in particular step. Oh, okay. Gotcha, Michael. Yeah, so focus bracketing. This is one that, to be fair, I'm not even the best at understanding what the what those settings are. And actually, yeah, why can't focus bracketing be set? Oh, it's because I'm in high-res mode. So focus bracketing, if you go into the actual focus mode here, what is being referenced here is the step value. The step value on this is going to be basically how coarse or fine the throw is, because it's using the autofocus motor in the lens and the camera. I do have to do a little more digging on this. I've honestly never looked too far into what the steps actually equate to, other than a relative kind of percentage move. The lower the step number, the tighter the move's going to be. The bigger the step number, the wider the focus move's going to be. So your aperture dependency is going to be kind of coming in there. But Michael, I will look into that a little bit further and try to get you an answer specifically on that one part. Yeah. Joshua says, why do I keep skipping your question? Joshua, where is your question? Let's go back up and check. If it's the question about an update on an S1H replacement, it's because you're not tagging at LUMIX USA. I don't see them all. Even if I had information on future cameras, I wouldn't be able to tell you here until you see something official coming from the accounts for us. So yeah, I got nothing for you at this point right now. Sorry. Let's see here. Very happy so far. Okay, that was that one. Live crop. Making money with it. Focus bracketing. Where did the other... There we go. Are you going... yeah, so... Yeah, Joshua, there's nothing I can answer on that one. Kind of disappointed. Nobody asked. Thoughts on the G100 refresh. Is it going to be available outside of Japan? Yeah, G100D is a product that's going to be available in the US. I think this is that double-edged sword of people online. G100D, just like we've done with G95D, some other cameras, as components are updated or changes have to be made for component availability or whatever it is, certain things change, which facilitates the need to actually have it be called something different, because if you got someone who has an original G100 and then you have someone with a G100D, if they both send it in, you have to be able to differentiate which camera's which because of part change or things like that. G100D does also get USB-C as a port. It is a 2.0 connection, though, just for minor updates. That camera, despite what a lot of people want to make you think online, that camera sells ridiculously well. Companies will do updates like this because you want to keep it in the line because it's selling, and if it's selling enough, it's worth it to update components and keep selling it. So, yeah, more point that it's a minor little update on that camera. Really, yeah. As far as when it's going to be available in the US, I don't have any information on that. But yeah, you can see online the information's there. So let's see here. Tim says, how do you change the style of your framing number so that it can tell the difference between my G9 and GX8? This is actually a pretty good question. As far as changing file names, what I typically do, if I want to be able to tell the difference between, what I shoot on my G9 versus my S5 IIX versus my GH6, what I do is I go to file and folder setting, which actually I have to put a card in the camera to do this. So let me throw a card in. And I just did what I told everybody else you shouldn't do, which is when you put insert media or take media out, you should be turning the camera off. So do as I say, not as I do sometimes. You would go to file or folder and file settings. Folder 1, in this case, you'll see like I've got the folders here and it tells you how many photos are within that. But what I do is I do file naming, folder number link, which means that it's going to be linked to the folder that it's in, or user setting means that I can come in here and I can change what the prefix is for the actual image. Some information. The P is going to indicate, in this case, that it is in sRGB. If I go back into the settings, and I have to remember where this is because I never change this on the cameras. At least I've never had to change this on the cameras. Cameras that you can change it from sRGB to Adobe RGB, you're going to see a different prefix on the file name there. So color space, if I change this to Adobe RGB, one, you see the color change. So sRGB, Adobe RGB. And two, when I go into the actual file name settings here, you'll see that it changed to an underscore. Underscore is Adobe RGB, P is for sRGB. But what I would do is come in here and I would change the file names to something I want. So if I want this to be, say I want this to be G9 Mark II, I would change this to just G9 in this case. And then, actually, in this case, I'll just call it G9T. You only have 3 letters to change it there. So now any photo that I take with this camera is going to be called up as G9 underscore G9T. And I would do the same for the GX8 at that point for you. GX8, change the file name to, G8 or something like that, or G8 underscore or something. It would do it at file name level, not at folders. Folders, because that's part of the DCIM standard, you're not really going to have too much control over that unless you're on a camera like the GH6, where you can go to the Cine file naming structure, which is a totally different naming structure for that. But yeah, Let's see here. Will there be a future update? We already addressed that question, Ian. If you take a look earlier in the stream. Something red. Is rolling shutter on the S5 IIX better than the S5 II? No, they're pretty much going to be the same. Any differences you typically see between the 2 and the 2X, as far as things like rolling shutter, dynamic range, stuff like that, it's margin of error differences. Testing methodology changes, stuff like that. I have S5 II and I'm thinking about S1R purchase. Does the S1R have the same philosophy wherein to see an exposure preview it utilizes constant preview and therefore the refresh lags heavy with shutter speed? Constant preview on the S1, S1R, and S1H is the older version of our constant preview. So you will always, if constant preview is turned on, you are more likely to end up seeing the... Actually, let me check this. I'm going to check this on my S1R. Constant preview on the S1 series cameras. Lock lever. Let's turn that off. Constant preview. It's under settings. Constant preview. Yes. So constant preview on the original S series is going to basically give you the shutter speed and aperture adjustments there. The the newer series, so like S5 Mark II, the S5 Mark IIX, G9 Mark II, GH6, those cameras, these are going to give you the ability to actually come in and separate out what your constant preview does. So I can come in here, go to set, and I can change the effect. I usually only use aperture as the effect because I don't want the shutter speed giving me the real shutter speed effect of what the exposure settings are going to be. So that will be a difference between an S1R and an S5 Mark II or Mark IIX. Let's see here. I do want to adjust this one. Can you connect a small hub with power and SSD connected to the camera and power and record? No, you cannot. The processors don't have the right, or don't have the same level of control that you would assume that a PC or a Mac would have. So, let's see here. Where can I find a full setup tutorial on the S5 IIX? Just purchased one at LUMIX USA. This is gonna depend. How you want to have it set up, what you want to do with the camera. Full setup tutorials we have, which is going to be relatively still relevant for this camera. If you want to understand what the system does, how it works, you're going to see that on the LUMIX channel. We have an entire series for the S1 platform. The menus are pretty much the same. The naming's going to be maybe a little different between certain things, and some options are going to be newer that are on this that aren't on the older cameras. But that can be a good place to kind of start with. Yeah. Let's see here. Is there a way to remove all 4-channel audio when you upload the footage on Premiere for editing? So you want to record, but you don't want any audio from the camera? The audio channels are going to go with the camera. So when you load it in Premiere, you're going to get the 4 channels. You would just have to remove them before you put them into the software. Even if you turn the audio off, you're still going to get 4. It's going to give you the 4 channels there. What I meant was to take raw photos that is cropped into APS-C field of view. So on 24 megapixels, sensor having 12 megapixel cropped raw photo. Oh, okay. I get you. So we don't have a cropped raw function in the camera. So you're always going to shoot the full 3:2 ratio in full frame or 4:3 ratio in micro four thirds. Even if you're doing things like using aspect ratios, you're still recording the full resolution of the image on the newer cameras, and then it's just telling the software, hey, this is where the crop was, so that you always still have the full-blown file out of it. It's an interesting point as far as wanting to be able to crop in for raw photos. The only way that you could force it is by throwing an APS-C lens on the camera, which will force the camera into APS-C because that's the only region of coverage for the lens when it communicates. Let's see here. Marlene, hey Marlene, how's it going? Interesting to know that the G100 is selling well. That explains why I keep getting asked about it, and I just love it. Yeah, G100 has been a phenomenal camera for us. I think a lot of times, especially in the forums and online and even here, you know, we get caught up in the latest and greatest and highest end spec products, but I think I saw someone on one of the forums say, you know, you realize when someone asks you for a recommendation of camera and they tell you like, hey, I only have maybe like $400 to $600 to spend on a camera, want to get something good, very quickly you realize how well placed that camera is for that category of customer. Is it going to be something that, you know, a lot of us in a higher level use case are going to prefer over some of the other cameras? Not necessarily. But we're not the only people that buy cameras out there. So, yeah. Let's see here. On the 70-200, I seem to get consistent sharp focus at 200mm f2.8. You seem to can't get consistent sharp focus at 200 f2.8. I have the S5 IIX. Should I get the lens recalibrated? I bought it open box. I also have the Platinum Pro service. Yeah, if you are ever in question, especially because you have the Platinum level service, if you are ever in question about performance of the lens and you have that as a resource, send it in. Have them take a look at it. Have them check, evaluate, clean contacts, all that kind of stuff. Just general service of the lens. Especially if you bought it secondhand or open box. Open box is one of those kind of nebulous terms. Most of the places don't necessarily agree on what they mean by open box. So yeah, you wanting to get it checked out is probably going to be the best thing for you. I could tell you, shooting with the S70-200 2.8 on my S5 IIX at 200mm, that thing is locked on target and it is sharp as hell. So if you're not seeing that, I would definitely get it checked out by the service team. Let's see. Andy says, any chance we're getting double exposure, multi-exposure for stills back in the S5 IIX? I'm using LUTs for stills and I love it. Absolute game changer for me. I would love to have multi-exposure back in the cameras. I don't know why it's not there. I have my thoughts as to why maybe, but yeah. At this point, I don't know if it's coming back or when it would come back, if it's something that's coming. So, Forgotten says, what is LUMIX planning to do to advocate LUMIX cameras aren't just great for video, but also photo? I'm always dispelling folks in the forums. LUMIX take great photos too and are feature rich. Yeah, that's a tough one. There's no hiding the fact that as far as LUMIX goes, we are incredibly well known for our video functionality. To the point that it is basically an expectation that any camera that we make in the market needs to have high-end video functions. Case in point, even the G9 Mark II, much to my own belief, or disbelief, will eventually be getting RAW over HDMI support because some of the logic with our side is, if we can do it and democratize a feature to more and more people, especially after more and more people start getting the cameras in their hands and using them, the market drives what you want to see in some of these cameras. The truth of the matter is that video is the far more public and popular area of growth for cameras. That's not to say that stills photography is being forgotten about. As a primary stills photographer for our cameras, I would do everything in my power to help that not happen. But what we've been doing a lot, if you look at our global social accounts, if you look at a lot of the features that we're putting in the cameras as far as tools to aid and help photographers, you know, provide better results, the G9 Mark II as an actual physical product development was centered around what photographers have told us they wanted to see in a camera. And I am going to poke fun at the commentary over on 4/3 Rumors about the photographers wanted the G9. Yeah, you're kind of damn right they wanted a camera like that. They want a camera that has, that isn't built first and foremost for video. You want a camera, the weather sealing was more important, the stabilization is more important in a lot of cases like that. So we've always been a very pragmatic brand when it comes to, design of the cameras. They're very much function over form in some perspectives. So as a photography tool, it's a lot of things like as we work with collaborations, like with things like Godox to make sure that flashes work better, to make sure that raw editing software has compatibility as fast as we can. G9 Mark II, the raw support was out before the cameras were even in anyone's hands in Adobe Creative Cloud for Adobe Creative Cloud software and the DNG converter. So yeah, that's kind of where that stuff is. Yeah. Let's see here. Philosophical question. So other ones first before that. Is there going to be some content from Lumix Collective on the Lumix USA channel? I think so. I'm not 100% sure. Most of the stuff that you've seen from the Collective, or if you haven't already, is go follow people like Anson, who I saw in the chat before. Go follow their channels, Micro 4 Nerds, Josh Cameron, Caleb Hoover, Mercedes Elisa, a ton of the different people that were out there. I know I'm forgetting a bunch of people. I apologize if I forgot you and you're watching this later and you're like, how the hell did he forget me? Go follow their social channels. They've been posting a ton of stuff from the event, and check out their work. That's really what the event was about all of the creators that are using the equipment. Okay. Rick says, philosophical question. What's Lumix's commitment to being indie film cinematic cameras? I think the image from the EVA 1 or an S1H rivals any Red. What is our commitment? Our commitment is that we're in full support of indie filmmaking in cinematic world. I think what gets confused in the camera world is that people want to see the newer, latest cameras that are out like every other year kind of thing. And in the true cinema side of the world, you rarely see cameras get updated that fast. The S1H is still a powerhouse for that side of the market. The EVA 1, unfortunately, is not a Lumix consumer product. That was one of our broadcast products. So even like if you ask Matt and I questions about that, we can answer them, but we don't really have any say in that product. So that's kind of a little more frustrating thing, I get. But the S1H is still like a beast when it comes to that side of the world. So until there are meaningful changes that we want to make to a platform like that, that's what you're going to see. We're not just going to update a camera just for the heck of it. When we update things, we try to make them substantial updates or make them update ready for something in the future, especially when you look at the higher end cameras. Cameras like G100 and stuff like that, those are, like I said, it's a different category of customer that you look at or user that you look at. Same person who's looking at a G100 as a camera that they want to get into isn't looking at an S1H or even an S5 Mark II most of the time. So yeah, it's kind of where it is. But yeah, we're fully committed to the markets that we're in. So asking for a friend, did Lumix banning dark pods? I get what the question is as far as regarding the GH6. I encourage anyone that's got a question like that to actually go talk to people that are using the camera. Again, this is one of those things where you kind of get paralysis by analysis. People start looking at what one person says and then not doing any research on their own as far as it goes. If anyone ever has concerns about image quality of any camera, go rent them. If you have the option to. Lens rentals, borrow lens, all those things. They've gotten so good at being able to get you cameras to try it. But yeah. I have a GH5, I have a GH5. The MAC address is blank and the camera is not able to connect to Wi-Fi. Is there a way to fix this? One of the first things I would try, if you're ever running into a problem like that, it means that it's not getting information back from your router or your mobile device. If you go into the camera settings under reset, So I don't want to reset that. You would select reset network settings. And that will totally reset the camera's network stuff. You'll have to re-enter passwords, all that kind of stuff. If this is happening on a mobile device or a router that has a VPN, turn the VPN off. If you are running a VPN on your mobile device, like I do often, you don't want to have the VPN running on here because it's adding another layer of communication. You're not actually directly connecting to the camera, and they'll never connect to each other. Once you turn that off, you'll see that it'll connect right away. So, let's see here. Where do we go? Marlene, I primarily shoot stills with my Lumix cameras, and I know a lot of photographers who do, but I use the basic video functions for teaching content. Yeah, that's kind of exactly how it goes. You know, a lot of times you're not going to see a ton of photographers online with big social media YouTube presence because it depends on the category that you're in. I consider pretty much anyone online that is creating YouTube content, especially if they have photography as a focus. Everyone in that case is basically a hybrid creator because you're also producing video. Doesn't matter if it's high-end pro, you know, working in a studio kind of thing, or if it's I'm making YouTube videos. That's how it works. I consider myself a hybrid creator because I do this every week while going out and taking a bunch of pictures. I am says, hello everyone. As a photographer first, my dream camera would be a GX8 or 9 style full frame with the customizability of the S5 II and the X series. Interesting. I definitely hear ya. It could be cool to see something like that. I don't know if we ever will. But yeah, opinion is heard and appreciated. John says, for me, I want a big camera and a small camera. Same user, yet different cameras. I don't want to use a phone. I think there are many people like me. Yeah, very true. Yep. Speaking of that For Thirds Rumors discussion you may have seen, the G9 Mark II doesn't have a fan also because the space was taken by a larger gyro. Yes. Yes, I believe actually it was in the conversation that you were having over there, I think. Yes, G9 Mark II does not have a fan, partially because that is also where the higher-end gyro is positioned. Different optics, different viewfinder, that kind of stuff. So by a lot of things are following through what the original design of the camera was for. Knowing that when we worked with photographers in what they wanted to see in a camera, they preferred having, even if, and this is the part that I know is going to get blocked out of context again online because that's just what the internet loves to do. Even if the weather resistance is practically the same between a G9 Mark II and an S5 Mark II or an S5 Mark II X or a GH6, which those three cameras are actively cooled, there is still these certain situations where having a camera that does not have vents and an active cooling solution would be a preferred choice. So looking at that side of it, that's why G9 Mark II, no cooling. That's why we took that out of there. That opened up the door for us to be able to use that space for different purposes now, like adding a higher end gyro into it, by increasing the cold side of the weather resistance, so now down to -10°C, and then also being able to go in and update the stabilization system on it compared to the previous model. All of these things do come with trade-offs. As we've said, the G9 Mark II does have thermal limitations when it comes to video recording in hotter temperatures, but when we, again, spoke with all of those photographers, and these are hybrid users as well. These are wildlife photographers that may want to be capturing some video clips, things. They don't need unlimited recording. They wanted, as long as you can get 5 to 20 minutes of recording out of the camera, they were golden with it. So that informs us and helps us design a camera like this. If some people want to take it personally, I'll let them. It's all good. Cool. Let's see. We got time for a couple more questions here. Thank you, YouTube. Is it possible to connect GH5 with DJI RS3 Mini via Bluetooth? No. I did address this a little bit earlier in the topic. Bluetooth requires very different levels of kind of communication and settings and how it's designed from day one versus trying to backwards in compatibility and stuff like that. So one of the one things that I wanted to actually kind of talk about again here a little bit is I want to reiterate on the point that I showed with this particular image. Dynamic range performance on the modern cameras. As I said, with the G9 Mark II, these are all images shot with the G9 Mark II. And someone asked about long exposure work, using things like just straight up long exposure, using things like live view composite. How are those affected with this particular camera? So I can tell you right away, this particular image here, this is a 13-second exposure, but it's not actually a 13-second exposure. It's a 13-second exposure taken over the course of about an hour and a half, I think 2 hours-ish maybe, because this is using live view composite. It's a 1600 ISO image at f2.8 using the 9mm Summilux, the f1.7. And this is edited to taste here. So to really kind of show that G9 Mark II, despite some online kind of completely writing it off, saying that, no, this is not a camera for low light or astrophotography, it absolutely can be. It depends on how you work with the cameras, what you want them to do for you. This image at 1600 ISO, this is not noise reduced. This is just out of the camera and then processed very heavily to kind of bring it up. If I reset the image, that's what it looked like out of the camera. So again, you can see that, you know, as I come through here and I start to actually kind of bring information up, if I come in and I change white balance, all that kind of stuff, there is still so much flexibility in this camera, even when you're doing long exposure work. And then even in situations where if I'm shooting in more challenging situations, this is again, G9 Mark II, 200mm, this is the 200 f2.8, 3200th of a second with animal eye detect autofocusing here. It latched on to the animal's eye. It's got it right there. And if I come through and start making a bunch of adjustments here, and this is not how I normally edit. I'm just doing this for effect. Show you how hard you can push these if you really wanted to. I can come in here and really pull all that detail out, especially in the feathers. How good the sensor performs with the higher resolution on this. YouTube compression is going to be killing this anyway, but you get the kind of point. G9 Mark II sensor is a fun sensor to be working with. The image quality out of it is spectacular for those that actually get out and shoot and not stare at spreadsheets and test charts. All right, a couple more questions came in here. Would love to see a GH5 Mark III, basically video version of the G9 Mark III. The GH6 is a different beast with a fan boost, no battery grip. Yeah, truth is, as we start pushing higher and higher in video specs, you're more and more likely to continue to see actively cooled cameras in that kind of category. Yeah. Do you know if G9 Mark II can send photos while shooting wirelessly to ShutterSnitch app on iOS for instant preview on iPad? I don't think so. You can send images while you capture with the LUMIX Sync app and have it just automatically be sending while you shoot. I did a stream on this a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, you can set it up to do that, and then if you have another app that's kind of watching a folder, you could be doing it that way. Nolan says, I love that the G9 Mark II and the S5 Mark II share a body. It makes it impossible not to want both bodies for the flexibility. Find that design very compact, not really understanding calling it a big camera. I am exactly with you. I love being able to jump between the two platforms for their strengths and not have to rethink where buttons are. Cool. All right, and we got time for one last question for today. Just for the sake of clarity, now that the G9 Mark II is getting RAW over HDMI, what are the advantages of the GH6? Some production advantages I can think of anyway, timecode. So yeah, with the GH6 versus the G9 Mark II, RAW over HDMI is going to be a relatively limited use case for some people. When you look at a GH6, it's about the production side of it. So for one, the G9 Mark II, there is always going to be that possibility of thermal limitations on the camera. It is not actively cooled. Yes, you're doing RAW over HDMI in that case. You are pushing a lot of the processing over HDMI, but if you're in really hot environments, you still can overheat the camera. It doesn't have a mechanism for actively keeping it cool. That's where the GH6 comes in. If you need things like hardwired timecode, GH6 has it, G9 Mark II doesn't. If you need to be able to have completely unlimited recording as a standalone camera, wherever you want to go, GH6, not on the G9 Mark II. Weather resistance, pretty much the same between the two. I would consider it a wash between the two. Yeah, the G9 Mark II, you can get into slightly cooler temperatures, but I think negative 10C versus 0, you're kind of splitting hairs for some situations. When you look at the some of the other use cases there, anamorphic, again, you've got a little bit better functionality when it comes to how the system works with the GH6. You have the ability to do things like ProRes to the CF Express card, where on the G9 Mark II, if you want to do ProRes, you have to go to an external SSD for anything over 1080. So if you're someone who doesn't like working with external SSDs, which is perfectly fine, the GH6 is going to be the better choice between the G9 Mark II and it, because the GH6 is going to be able to go to that CF Express card. Image quality wise, G9 Mark II, I will say, is going to give you probably the better overall image at this current point, because now with the DR boost function change, with the hardware change for the sensor, with the updated system in general and the PDAF, you're going to have, if that's what is important to you, things like autofocus, G9 Mark II is going to be the better choice there. Vlog is at 500 ISO on the G9 Mark II, where DR boost is manually selectable on the GH6, and it's up at 2000 ISO. So yeah, you've got just different choices there. Much higher end production use cases, and a lot of users that I know that are working with the GH6 absolutely love that camera for it and wouldn't replace it with the G9 Mark II. Some people, it's down to they just like the form factor. The GH camera's better than the form factor of the G9 Mark II and the S5 Mark II series. So yeah, at that point, it's going to be kind of really just down to what a lot of people are going to prefer as far as what their camera choice is. And there's nothing wrong with that. More question. Whatever happened to that LUMIX G9 to photo contest on Instagram LUMIX was running? Was there ever a winner announced? I will have to check on that. If it was on the @LUMIX account, the just @LUMIX account, that's the global account. I don't run that one. I don't actually have a lot to do with that account. But I can check with that team and see what's going on, who won, and yeah, what the results were. Cool. After that, yeah, we're about 20 minutes after the hour. Thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in. This was a lot of fun. I love taking, every once in a while, just taking the time and literally just answering your questions that you have in the chat. It's fun doing all the prepared stuff and going through menus and trying to teach you certain things that I have found and really liked working on the cameras. But in the end, these streams are about helping all of you and interacting with all of you so that you have the ability to actually talk to us and get your points across to us. I am big, if you've been following for a long time, I am big on the fact that this community that we have for photo and video is one of the more unique things in the industry. It's rare that I think brands open themselves up to this level of direct communication. And I am super excited that we've been growing, getting more viewers, getting more new users into the platform, having these kinds of conversations, taking the criticism, celebrating the positives that happen with new products and new technologies that come out. And that's all because of all of you taking your time and joining. So thank you so much for tuning in every week that y'all have been, and just providing and being part of this community. It is truly one of the most fun things and most enjoyable things that I do for LUMIX. All of that being said, we do have to end the stream today. We will be back next Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time for another episode. That one is going to be a little more structured than this stream was. But in the meantime, if we didn't get to your question, I apologize. Feel free to leave it as a comment after this video is posted, or you can always, there's an email address at the end of the stream, the end card of the stream. You can always feel free to shoot us an email there. We don't always reply to that email address. I try to reply to some of them, but usually it's a catch-all of, hey, I want you to talk about this, and as long as it's in there, we're going to see it. If you haven't already, take a look, follow us over on our social channels, LUMIX USA here in the US, at LUMIX is our global channel on Instagram. If you haven't subscribed to the LUMIX USA YouTube channel yet, please do so. It helps us every day. It helps us grow with that kind of stuff. If you liked the video, if you liked the conversation, give us a like on this video. Most importantly, comment on the video after it's posted. That helps us greatly with the algorithms on YouTube to getting more viewership and more eyes on this platform. We will be taking, so a little bit longer programming notes. We will be taking the last week of the year off. Typically, I do that every year, so we've got 2 more streams before the end of the year. Yep, we have next week and the 21st. The week of the 28th, that stream will be recorded as we prep and get ready to head out to CES, which is the beginning of January next year. So if you happen to be out in Las Vegas for CES, swing by Panasonic's booth. We will be there with the cameras and all that kind of fun stuff to meet you all in person. Other than that, I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Have an awesome weekend. Get out there, create some cool stuff. And yeah, I look forward to coming back to you all next Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, here on LUMIX Live. Later.